In the bustling city of London lived Sir Edward Hamilton, a billionaire whose empire stretched from oil to real estate, technology to banking. His name commanded respect in boardrooms, charity galas, and politics alike. With his towering frame, silver hair, and commanding presence, Edward was a man who had lived life on his own terms. But one thing had always been complicated: his marriages. Over the years, Edward had married 5 different women, each unique in beauty, intelligence, and charm. His sprawling mansion in Surrey was filled with luxury, but behind the walls, rivalry and jealousy brewed among the women, who all shared the title Mrs. Hamilton. Victoria, the first wife, elegant and refined. She had been with Edward when he was just an ambitious young man starting out. But wealth and high society had changed her. She now cared more about appearances, her aristocratic social circle, and preserving the Hamilton family's prestige. Isabella, the second wife, a stunning beauty who loved fashion, parties, and attention. She was magnetic, the kind of woman who could silence a room with her presence. But beneath the glamour, her love often seemed conditional, rooted in luxury. Charlotte, the third wife, witty, vivacious, and adventurous. She was younger than the first 2 and loved traveling, concerts, and excitement. Edward often wondered if she truly loved him, or just the lifestyle his billions provided. Margaret, the fourth wife, soft-spoken, religious, and kind-hearted. She dedicated her time to charity, helping orphanages, and volunteering at hospitals. She wasn't flashy, but her quiet strength often made Edward pause. Emily, the youngest, in her late 20s, innocent and cheerful. She was the one people dismissed as the naive wife. Yet her simplicity, warmth, and sincerity often touched Edward in ways the others did not. As Edward approached his 70s, his heart grew restless. He had built an empire, but deep within, he wondered, do these women love me for who I am, or for what I have? One night, sitting alone in his study surrounded by portraits of his past, he resolved to find the truth. He summoned his most trusted doctor and lawyer and whispered his plan. News spread like wildfire. Sir Edward Hamilton was gravely ill. It was said he had an incurable disease. The doctors spoke in hushed tones. The staff tiptoed in corridors. For weeks, Edward stayed confined to his private chambers, pretending to be weak, frail, and close to death. The wives were told that their husband might not have much longer to live. Now Edward would finally see their hearts. Victoria, first wife. Victoria arrived at his bedside dressed in her finest pearls. She sat beside him and spoke with elegance. Edward, you must stay strong. The Hamilton name must not fall. You are the pillar of this family. But Edward noticed something. Her visits were brief. Her eyes lingered more on the documents in his study than on him. She often whispered to the lawyer about property, inheritances, and family estates. Her love was for legacy, not for Edward himself. Isabella, second wife. Isabella cried dramatically when she first heard the news. She arrived with tears and flowers, whispering, "Oh, Edward, how could life be so cruel?" But soon her visits grew less frequent. Instead, she filled her time with social gatherings, fashion events, and travels abroad. When Edward asked why she didn't stay longer, she replied, "My darling, I cannot bear to see you this way. It breaks my heart." Yet Edward saw her dazzling smiles in society columns. Her grief was a mask. Charlotte, third wife. Charlotte came with laughter and tried to lighten the mood. She brought musicians to play, comedians to joke, and tried to distract him with energy. But within days, she grew restless. She complained to the staff, "I cannot waste my youth in a sick room. Edward has lived his life, but mine is just beginning." When Edward heard those words from a loyal servant, his heart tightened. She cared for excitement, not for him. Margaret, fourth wife. Margaret was consistent and steady. She prayed for him daily, bringing priests to bless his health. She often whispered, "Life and death belong to God, Edward. I will pray for you until your last breath." She didn't cry loudly nor seek attention, but her devotion was undeniable. Though her love seemed tied more to faith than romance, Edward respected her sincerity. Emily, fifth wife. Emily surprised him most of all. She abandoned her outings, ignored the glamorous invitations of her youth, and stayed by his side day and night. She cooked with her own hands instead of relying on chefs, brought him water, read to him from his favorite books, and even sang softly when he couldn't sleep. One evening, Edward, still feigning weakness, asked her, "Emily, why do you waste your youth here? You could be anywhere in the world." She held his hand and smiled through tears. "My husband, when you were strong, you gave me everything. Now, in your weakness, it is my turn. I don't need the world. If you are here, I am home." Edward turned away, hiding the tears that filled his eyes. Here was love, unmasked by wealth. After 3 months, Edward called all his wives to the grand drawing room of the mansion. He entered, walking strong and upright, no longer the frail man they believed him to be. Gasps filled the room. "I am not sick," Edward announced, his voice echoing against the marble walls. "I pretended to be ill to see who truly loves me, not my money." Silence fell like a heavy curtain. The wives exchanged nervous glances. To Victoria, he said, "You cared for prestige more than me." To Isabella, he said, "Your tears were for show. Your heart was elsewhere." To Charlotte, he said, "You loved laughter and youth, not my soul." To Margaret, he said, "Your prayers touched me. You were faithful, though your love was to God above me." To Emily, he said, "You gave me your heart, your time, and your devotion. You stayed when all others left. You alone loved me for who I am." Edward rewrote his will before their eyes. Though he ensured each wife would be financially secure, the largest portion of his estate, the companies, the trusts, and the mansion, went to Emily. "I will leave my empire," he declared, "in the hands of the one who loved me when I was weak. Emily, you are the true lady of this house." The wives wept, some out of regret, some out of anger. But Edward felt peace for the first time in years. For the billionaire who had once doubted love had finally found it. Not in diamonds or power, but in the quiet devotion of a young wife whose heart was pure.